So for me, I have this thing where I genuinely love being in MRIs because it just feels like I'm under my rock again. You know, kind of like what an introvert would say. But for me, I'm like a bit of both. I'm like an introvert and an extrovert depending on who I'm around. But just being in an MRI just makes me feel like I'm under my rock, where I just don't have to listen to anyone speak or just listen to anyone in general. And it's like sometimes it's just like really nice where it's like you don't have to process what they're even saying, because when you're having to process what they're saying, you're not really listening to half of the things that they're saying, and then you start freaking out, and then they get annoyed with you for not listening, and then it's like game over. It's just a lot easier to be under my rock, which just happens to be the MRI. Hey guys, so in this video I wanted to be talking about multiple sclerosis and MRIs. And the only reason I wanted to be talking about this was because I actually just had an MRI about a few days ago, and even when I had my MRI, I was like, oh, this would make an interesting video because I feel like I could talk about a few things here. So if you're able to relate to some of the things that I do talk about, let me know in the comments below, or even message me on Instagram because I will get back to you. I actually don't find out my MRI results until September 22nd, which honestly sucks, but honestly, if there's anything I learned about MS is nothing but a f***ing waiting game. It's so annoying, but you know what, I'm just gonna wait patiently because I don't want to upset my lesions and create another one in the process of finding out if I have any new lesions. So yeah, this is just me thinking too much. But yeah, so let me know in the comments below if you guys are able to relate to some of the things that I do talk about in this video, or if you're not, still let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And for now, I hope you guys enjoy this video. Let me just say one thing. For those of you who are claustrophobic, good luck, because you guys are absolutely going to hate MRIs. But for me personally, I'm not claustrophobic, luckily. I remember my very first MRI that I did, so this goes back to 2017. I actually brought my dad with me because I wasn't sure if I was going to be claustrophobic, and I wasn't sure if I was going to freak out. But when I went into the MRI machine thing, I didn't even freak out. It just felt like I was under my blanket. It was really weird. But yeah, I just fell asleep. I always fall asleep in MRIs. Are you guys like this too? But yeah, so usually when I'm in MRIs, I don't feel stressed at all. I'm not claustrophobic. Going into an MRI, it just honestly feels like I'm under my blanket. Like, it's like I'm under my blanket, I just need to go to sleep, and then it'll all be over kind of thing. So it's like, it's never really stressed me out. With all the MRIs I've had so far, I'm only 22 right now, it's a little weird because I didn't think I'd have to go into that many MRIs in my entire life, but but yeah, it is what it is, and it's okay. So usually when I go into MRIs, the first thing I do is literally fall asleep, because the moment my head like rests on like a bed or anything, I will fall asleep really quickly. Usually with MRIs, I'm usually in there for about like 30 to 45 minutes, I would say. But it never feels that long. Maybe because I'm not actually freaking out in the MRI, where it would have actually felt much longer. But MRIs usually go by really quickly. Like, they'll tell you, you know, it's 30 minutes or 45 minutes, and it's not bad. It's not as bad as people make it seem, and it's usually people who are claustrophobic that make it seem so bad, but just know that it's not bad. Like, literally for me, when I'm laying down, I can actually see past my legs, right? Like, I'll literally have to look down, and I can actually see outside like a bit, and it makes me feel comfortable knowing that there's like a door outside of this little rock. So yeah. The stupid helmet. Guys, okay, it's not called a helmet, but it's like a cage, okay? It's like a cage that's attached to the bed that literally wheels you into the MRI. But it's like a cage, right? And you have to put your entire head in there, like when you're laying down, that is. And basically what happens is you put your head in, close it like this, so literally over your head, but you can still see everything outside because there's like holes and stuff in it, right? Not holes, but like openings. But the one thing I don't like about this is that before she even closes it, the nurse actually puts in all of these sponge-like things in the helmet with you, and I don't like this. It just makes me feel like I actually can't move, and I guess that's the point of an MRI, because in an MRI you actually cannot move. And it's really interesting for me because I twitch a lot too, but my last MRI I did not twitch once, and I thought it was pretty surprising because in my MRI before that I twitched quite a bit. And the nurse that was there was literally like, oh, don't move in your MRI. In my head I'm thinking, what am I supposed to do if I'm twitching? Like, I'm not telling my body to move, it just moves when it wants to move. And yeah, so that's probably one of the annoying parts about MRIs, having the cage just lock around you. And why I find this annoying is because I can't move in an MRI, right? And in an MRI, because you can't move, you need to have like your entire head just positioned in one spot kind of thing. And why I don't like this is because I get Ocrevus itches. Like I would say MS itches, but I don't know if it's MS related or if it's the drug that I'm on right now. But I'm pretty sure it's a drug I'm on because it's one of the side effects of Ocrevus where you feel these itchy feelings. But yeah, when you're in MRI, you can't move, right? So like, what are you supposed to do when you feel itchy? Like, it's so annoying. I think this is the part I also don't like because it's like, when I'm itchy, I need to itch. I feel like a lot of you guys are like this. When you're itchy, you just itch, right? And it's like, when you have to hold that itch, it gets so uncomfortable and it's like, ugh. And you bet I moved in the MRI just to itch my forehead because it was so itchy. I mean, I wasn't moving my brain and the MRI was for my brain. So I guess if I moved any other part of my body, it was okay. So the new MRI machine, I think this is a really good machine for people with claustrophobia to be in because there's actually, like, you go in, right? And when you go into this machine, what is it called, the MRI? You go in, and when you go in, when you're like laying your head up, right? There's like a mirror right above your head, and within this mirror, I think there's like another mirror in the MRI or whatever, and it's kind of like a reflection to what's outside, like right in front of you if you weren't in the MRI, basically. And I think this is really helpful for people who are claustrophobic, I would say, because they can actually see what's outside. But for me, I didn't really need to see anything because I wasn't claustrophobic to begin with. It wasn't moving as much as the other one was. Not my last MRI, but the MRI before that was moving quite a bit. And it was just so interesting because by the time I was done my MRI, the nurse pulls me out, right? And when she takes me out, I asked her, I was like, is this a new machine? And she goes, why do you ask that? And I was like, because there's like a mirror above me and I swear I never saw that the last time that I was in the MRI. And she was like, oh, we had this new MRI for like a year now. And I was like, if we had it for a year, then that must have meant that I've already been in this MRI before. And she looks at me and she smiles and she's like, you probably have. And I was like, it's not that I don't remember, it's just I remember falling asleep the moment I got wheeled into the MRI because I was so tired that day. It was last year in September. I remember being wheeled into the MRI and I was passed out. I was like, oh my god, I'm tired. Because I had to wake up really early for that. I think I woke up at like 6 because I went by bus and it took a while to get to the hospital. So yeah. I forgot to mention, for the MRI for my brain, I only go in like probably like this much, like halfway, whereas when I had my spinal cord MRI like a while ago, my whole body went in and I still wasn't claustrophobic. I still wasn't claustrophobic, but I also wasn't able to see past my toes. So that kind of sucked, but I mean, I wasn't freaking out. I did not like how it literally moves so much for your spinal cord. I didn't really like how that felt. It was very uncomfortable. It felt like I was on a roller coaster and it was like making me feel so dizzy, but I just had to close my eyes and just get it over with. Those of you who've had a spinal cord MRI, let me know in the comments below if your MRI shook much more than a brain MRI did. Because for me, I found that the spinal cord MRI, it shook like a lot. It was really weird. And oh my god, I forgot to mention, Sue retired. I really liked Sue because Sue was such a sweet woman. Every time I would go into an MRI, she would always treat me like she was my mom because I was so young. I feel like I still am, but yeah, she would always like be so careful with me. Especially when she would poke that contrast needle in me. She would always be so careful and it would hurt, but it wouldn't hurt as much as when I would get blood tests done because people just jam that shit in you and it just really hurts so bad. I don't like blood tests. The stupid contrast needle. Guys, I absolutely hate this needle. They poke you in the same spot that they poke you for a blood test. And why I don't like this is because I don't like getting needles in this area and right here. But after they poke you, they kind of just put I don't know, it's really weird because you have to sit in an MRI with the needle still in you. For those of you who don't even know what contrast needle I'm talking about, let me insert a picture right now so you'll know. So with this contrast needle, what it's supposed to do is supposed to make the images of your brain more clear, is what I was told. It's only for like 45 minutes and then it's out of you. You get this ball in your hand and the nurse basically tells you to press the ball when you need help with something. Like you have a lot of things to do in an MRI. But yeah, she just tells you to press it if you just freak out or like if you're just feeling claustrophobic that very moment, to just press it. I've actually never pressed this ball. Like guys, I was so tempted last week to press the ball to see what would happen because I was just being a curious pre. I wanted to know what would happen, but I just never ended up doing it because how stupid would it be if I just pressed the ball and the nurse comes in to ask me why I pressed the ball and I would have just been like, oh yeah, I was just curious to know what would happen. But yeah. For those of you who've actually pressed the ball in your hand, can you let me know in the comments below what happens then? Like, do sirens go off in the MRI? Or does the nurse just casually just walk in pretending like nothing's going wrong with you in the MRI? So, I'm just so curious to know. Please tell me one of you guys have pressed this stupid ball because I want to know what's happened. That's pretty much it to my video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comments below if you can relate to some of the things that I do talk about, or how you feel being in an MRI, because I would love to hear from you guys. And subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Instagram and check out my blog. I'll post links down below as always. And I'll see you guys in my next video that I will post soon. Bye guys. But when he was talking to me, he looked so serious because he had his mask on too. So when he was asking me if I needed help, I was like, yeah, I was just, I was literally thinking about what the say because I couldn't even remember what I was going to say.